Hello, I'm Mary Beard, and I'm glad you can join me to explore some of my favourite things in the British Museum exhibition, Nero, the man behind the myth. I'm standing here in the first main section of the show. As you come into it, you pass a full-length statue of a young boy, 12 or 13 years old, clad in a toga. And he is actually the young Nero. And he's an important reminder to us that Nero, he wasn't 13 when he came to the throne, but he was not much more. He was about 16, and he was, in other words, a boy emperor. As you come round the corner, you come and meet his family. And very important amongst his family are the women of the imperial house. And perhaps most important of all is Nero's mother, Agrippina. Now, she was the last wife of the Emperor Claudius, who was Nero's predecessor on the throne. And it is always said that Agrippina wangled Nero onto the throne in preference to the legitimate natural children of Claudius himself. She was the power behind the throne. Here you see her looking actually very beautiful. There's an absolutely gorgeous, miniature, lustrous green stone portrait of Agrippina. A very nice symbol of the way imperial women get represented in all kinds of materials, in all kinds of shapes and sizes. Here, Agrippina looks out at you, all green. But there's one statue here which I think it's quite easy to walk past. And it's actually a statue of Messalina, who was the previous wife of the Emperor Claudius before Agrippina. And she's rather special, and I want to show you a bit about her. Meet Messalina behind me. Now, Messalina's no direct relation of Nero at all, but she is the last but one wife of the Emperor Claudius, and she was followed by Agrippina, Nero's mother. What you see is a very stately lady, and I think for some people that's a bit of a surprise, because what Roman writers said about Messalina was frankly terrible. She was supposed to have been, adulterous is putting it mildly, and she was finally killed off by her husband Claudius after one of her more lurid escapades, and then he married Agrippina. But she doesn't look here as anything but a perfect Roman wife. She's clad in her stola, she is cradling her child, who must be Britannicus, Claudius's son, and it was poor little Britannicus who Nero kind of bypassed on his way to the throne. She's perfection. She is the wife of Claudius, the Roman emperor, as perfect mother. I have to say, little Britannicus does look a bit odd, but I think that's because he was quite heavily restored later. But there's a secret about this statue which you might not spot instantly, because actually the Roman sculptor has based this very closely on a famous 4th century BC statue, that's 500 years earlier, showing the goddess Peace holding her child, Little Wealth. So he's taken the template of this famous statue and turned it into Messalina. Now, I think what's interesting about that is that it's showing you, it's underlining how these empresses, whatever stories you read about them in the scurrilous Roman texts, they could be seen as not just perfect mums, but pretty much close to the divine. Messalina here stands for peace, wealth, and prosperity. She doesn't stand for adultery. And the same is going to go for Agrippina, Nero's mum. This is Agrippina, Nero's mum, full size. Now, her reputation is about as bad as Messalina's. She's supposed to have schemed her son Nero onto the Roman throne, partly by murdering Claudius with a bowl of poisoned mushrooms. She is said to have had extreme influence over Nero when he was still a young ruler, such extreme influence that there were rumours that they had an incestuous relationship. And pretty soon, Nero is supposed to have got so fed up with Mum that he killed her. Now, how much of any of that is true, it's very hard to know. Part of it, at least, I'm pretty sure, is one of those kind of blame the woman stories. I mean, we're very used to that in modern politics. If you want to know why a prime minister or president is doing something you don't quite approve of, you blame the wife or the girlfriend. And part of that, I think, has landed on Agrippina and probably also on Messalina before. So I have more of a soft spot for her than you would gather if you read the histories of Tacitus or Suetonius. But this statue of her, for me, is really, really precious. It has come to the exhibition from Rome, although I have to tell you, it's a statue with a very complicated history, and its real head has actually ended up in Copenhagen, and this is an exact replica. But it's a statue in this really precious, hard, basanite black stone. We're so used to thinking about ancient statuary as if it was partly bronze, few precious stones, but largely white marble, that we forget there were these extraordinary versions in different sorts of stone. And I think that to a Roman viewer, whatever they thought about Agrippina, whether they believed the rumours or not, they would have recognised this as extremely precious. It is a really, really, really hard stone. This would have taken months and months to carve. And in a sense, it's that kind of simple signal, the enormous labour that it would have taken to make, that makes this shout out at you, this is a very expensive piece from the Roman royal family. But let's now escape from the really posh royal family and go and see something from a much more ordinary house in Pompeii. Ancient Rome was a theatrical culture. It wasn't just the Emperor Nero who was mad keen on the theatre. It was popular entertainment too. And I know we think of the Roman people as being more interested in gladiators than anything else, but actually they flocked to theatrical displays and drama of all kinds, from revivals of 5th century Greek tragedy to modern farces. And the very, very, very rich and the not quite so rich also took scenes from theatre and decorated their houses with them. And this is a great example from a house in Pompeii, which shows you a scene from Euripides' play, Euripides, the 5th century BC Athenian dramatist, his play Iphigenia in Tauris, which told the story of the Greek princess Iphigenia, who had been sacrificed by her father Agamemnon in order to get a fair wind from the gods on his way to the Trojan War. But no one really knew what actually happened to Iphigenia. There are loads of stories. Euripides tells the story of her becoming a temple attendant, a priestess on the Black Sea. And here she is, the daughter of Agamemnon, now holding court in her temple, but not for very much longer, because her brother Orestes, with his friend Pylades, has come to look for her and is about to rescue her. Now, it's quite interesting from a female point of view, because so many of Euripides' tragedies centred on a female main character. And here we see that female main character, but now replicated on the walls of a house at Pompeii. We think of Pompeii as a very ordinary little Roman town, and in some ways that's exactly what it was. But there were clearly some people with money here. I mean, it took quite a lot of money to have painting in this kind of style. But you can go even further than that, and some of the villas outside the city have produced really exquisite, valuable silver treasure. And one of the highlights of this show is part of a treasure from a place called Morigina, just outside Pompeii. And it is the silver dinner service of someone with a very great deal of money. The silver treasure from Morigina really is splendid, but it does play a bit into our image of the Romans as rich and luxurious. Well, some of them certainly were, and actually you can see in the Nero show some of the really exquisite bits of decoration from Nero's own palaces. But I've got a tip here. The Romans weren't all rich and luxurious, and you should always say to yourself, when you're looking at something like this treasure, who made it, who cleaned it, and who did the washing up? Now, among all the wonderful, precious and intriguing works of art in this exhibition, it might surprise you to know that this is my very favourite object of all. It looks a bit of a boring block of marble, that's what it is, and it's a tombstone. And the name of the dead person is inscribed on it, Claudia Eclogae. Who's she, you might say? So what? Well, actually, this is 99.9% certain the tombstone of Nero's wet nurse, who was called Eclogae. And she was also one of the people who took Nero off to be buried after he'd killed himself when the armies were rebelling against his rule. We're 99.9% certain because the biographer Suetonius, writing in the 2nd century AD, tells us her name, Eclogae. She was a slave. She certainly started out life as a slave when she was his nurse. Her name, Claudia Eclogae, suggests that at a certain point she was given her freedom. Now, there's something for me which is kind of poignant about this. I mean, this is a real connection between Nero's nanny and us. This is where she was buried. Now, I don't want to be too sloppy and sentimental. I mean, I think that there are lots of nasty dictators in the world who have had very faithful nurses, but it still kind of just hits me that this is really Nero's nurse, the very woman who took him off at the last to bury him. So I hope that when people actually come and visit the exhibition, they don't walk past this ordinary block of marble, because it's not an ordinary block of marble at all. Thank you very much for joining me on this tour. It's been a pleasure to take you round. And if you come to the show itself, make sure you stop and have a good look at Claudia Eclogae. Thank you.